His Excellency, Mr. Ong Ye Kung, Minister for Transport, Singapore, Chairperson, Admiral George Asabia Jr., Commandants of the Philippine Coast Guard, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome all the speakers and participants for joining in the 15th Anniversary Symposium of ReCAAP from across the globe. I'm David Lee from ReCAAP Information Sharing Center. This milestone offers ReCAAP member states and all the stakeholders an opportunity to reflect on what ReCAAP has achieved over the past 15 years and look ahead at the future of ReCAAP. To start the symposium, themed Enhancing Regional Cooperation, 15 Years and Beyond, it is my great pleasure to invite Admiral George Asabia Jr., Chairperson of the ReCAAP IC Governing Council and Commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard, to deliver an opening address. Chairperson, please.
Your Excellency, Mr. Ong Ye Kung, Minister for Transport, Republic of Singapore, Excellency Ambassadors, Governors of ReCAAP ISC Governing Council, distinguished speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant day to everyone. As the chairperson of the ReCAAP ISC Governing Council, it is an honor and privilege for me to welcome all of you to this symposium to commemorate the 15th anniversary of ReCAAP. Since its establishment in 2006, the ReCAAP ISC has been making utmost efforts to contribute in addressing the situation of piracy and sea robbery in Asia within the legal framework of ReCAAP agreement. It is a great pleasure for me to recognize that the ReCAAP ISC has achieved very positive results in its three missions, namely information sharing, capacity building, and cooperative arrangements. Yes, we are now facing a big challenge of COVID-19 related pandemic. But be that as it may, in this unprecedented time, maritime transportation remains vital in the delivery of goods and energy, essential for people and industries. But needless to say, maritime agencies are doubly challenged due to pandemic protocols along coastlines, not to mention that seafarers have been subjected to prolonged periods at sea due to delay in crew changes. Under these circumstances, among others, the role of ReCAAP in promoting the safe maritime transport in Asia has evolved to be more relevant than ever. Having said this, I am proud to say that ReCAAP ISC is more committed to its mission of protecting crew, vessels, and cargo from piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia, even in this time of pandemic. The 15th anniversary offers the ReCAAP and the stakeholders a timely opportunity to reflect on the journey we have collectively taken, reconfirm the commitment to our shared mission, and look ahead at the future of ReCAAP to remain relevant amid changing external environment. In this regard,
Repeat.
I highly appreciate the Minister for Transport of Singapore, the Secretary General of the IMO, the contracting parties of ReCAAP, and the partners for sharing their invaluable perspectives today. I am sure that the symposium will be fruitful and instructive. At this juncture, I now declare the 15th Anniversary Symposium open.
Chairperson, can you hear me? Chairperson.
Yes.
I apologize. There was a slight issue with the audio earlier on, and the audience could not hear you until somewhere towards the middle of your speech. So can I beg your indulgence to give us your opening address one more time? I'm sorry, sir.
Okay. How's my audio now, David? Is it okay?
Yes, good. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. Sorry for that. Your Excellency, Mr. Ong Ye Kung, Minister for Transport, Republic of Singapore, Excellency Ambassadors, Governors of ReCAAP ISC Governing Council, distinguished speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant day to everyone. As the chairperson of the ReCAAP ISC Governing Council, it is an honor and privilege for me to welcome all of you to this symposium to commemorate the 15th anniversary of the ReCAAP. Since its establishment in 2006, the ReCAAP ISC has been making utmost efforts to contribute in addressing the situation of piracy and sea robbery in Asia within the legal framework of ReCAAP agreement. It is a great pleasure for me to recognize that the ReCAAP ISC has achieved very positive results in its three missions, namely information sharing, capacity building, and cooperative arrangements. Yes, we are now facing a big challenge of COVID-19 related pandemic. But be that as it may, in this unprecedented time, maritime transportation remains vital in the delivery of goods and energy, essential for people and industries. But needless to say, maritime agencies are doubly challenged due to pandemic protocols along coastal lines, not to mention that seafarers have been subjected to prolonged periods at sea due to delay in crew changes. Under these circumstances, among others, the role of ReCAAP in promoting safe maritime transport in Asia has evolved to be more relevant than ever. Having said this, I'm proud to say that ReCAAP ISC is more committed to its mission of protecting crew, vessels, and cargo from piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia, even in these trying times. The 15th anniversary offers the ReCAAP and the stakeholders a timely opportunity to reflect on the journey we have collectively taken, reconfirm the commitment to our shared mission, and look ahead at the future of ReCAAP to remain relevant amid changing external environment. In this regard, I highly appreciate the Minister for Transport of Singapore, the Secretary General of the IMO, the contracting parties of ReCAAP, and the partners for sharing their invaluable perspective today. I am sure that the symposium will be fruitful and instructive. At this juncture, I now declare the 15th anniversary symposium open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored today with the presence of Mr. Ong Ye Kung, Minister for Transport, Republic of Singapore. As many of you are aware, Singapore is the host country of ReCAAP ISC. It is my pleasure now to invite His Excellency to deliver a welcome address. Minister, please.
Distinguished governors of ReCAAP, High Commissioners, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to join you today as the ReCAAP Information Sharing Center, or ISC, commemorates its 15th anniversary. Seaborne trade has long been the quiet and reliable enabler of the world economy, way before the term multinational companies was coined, way before the word globalization became a buzzword. And it has been indispensable in ensuring that people around the world have access to essential goods, food, energy, medical supplies. And today, more than 80% of world merchandise trade by volume is carried by sea. So while COVID-19 has caused upheavals in seaborne trade, it has also accentuated the importance of global shipping. And in that context, we also underscore the importance of Asia to seaborne trade. As a region, it is the largest end market of the world. It is also the largest factory of the world, where goods originate. And in 2019, nearly 65% of global port container cargo handling was concentrated in Asia. Today, the region remains the fastest growing part of the world, with a rising middle class. The world can participate and contribute and benefit from Asia's growth through trade and exchange of people and ideas. And together we can bring about better lives for our people and solve global problems together. And the more our collective well-being is intertwined with each other, the stronger our cooperation and the safer the world becomes. So in this web of sea lanes that make seaborne trade possible, the Straits of Malacca and the Straits of Singapore stand out. For centuries, the Straits have been the thoroughfare of the world, a major artery of free trade that provides passage to 1/3 of global container trade and about 1/4 of global oil trade. So how do we protect the Straits of Malacca and Singapore as a global commons? And there are two important aspects. First, UNCLOS, which is the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, guarantees freedom of navigation through the straits, thus connecting East and West, India and China, and the world to Southeast Asia. Second, the global community needs to exercise collective responsibility and work together to keep the straits safe. Piracy has a long history in Asia, dating back centuries. In more recent times, incidents of piracy and sea robbery in the Strait of Malacca in the early 2000s led to it being declared a war risk area by the Lloyd's Joint War Committee. A major aspect of safe navigation along the Straits of Malacca and Singapore is to protect our seafarers from the perennial threat of piracy and sea robberies. ReCAAP therefore entered into force in 2006. It is the first regional government-to-government initiative and a platform for international cooperation against a transboundary problem. Many like-minded partners from the region and beyond joined its mission. ReCAAP's membership started with 14 contracting parties, which has grown to 20 today. It includes partners from Europe and Americas. And we look forward to welcoming more partners, such as France and Germany, who are working towards joining ReCAAP. The ReCAAP ISC was set up in Singapore in November 2006. Since then, it has established itself as a vital part of regional anti-piracy architecture through information sharing, capacity building, and cooperative arrangements. An example of ISC's good work was how it tackled the problem of oil cargo thefts. When the center observed an increase in incidents of oil cargo theft a few years ago, it worked with the industry, the Information Fusion Center established by the Republic of Singapore Navy, and the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at NTU to produce a guide in 2015 for ship owners and crew of tankers transmitting through the region. The guide provided practical information such as key risks to be mindful of, preventive measures to adopt, and also the reporting channels. So such efforts, together with increased enforcement, contributed to the subsequent decline in oil cargo thefts from tankers, from a peak of 15 incidents in 2014 to 3 per year in 2016 and 2017, and none from 2018 onwards. Following this, ReCAAP ISC developed the more comprehensive regional guide to counter piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia. That's in 2016, to better prepare ship owners and crew members. In capacity building, the center adapted quickly during the pandemic to ensure that officials from ReCAAP's contracting parties could continue to attend virtual training sessions and lectures. Through technology, the center also continued its engagements with the shipping industry. More than 150 officials and shipping industry representatives participated in the center's events and workshops virtually last year. In the area of international cooperation, the ReCAAP model has been emulated by the International Maritime Organization in its formulation of the Djibouti Code of Conduct in 2009. 3 ISCs were set up in 2011 to address piracy and sea robbery in the Western Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Aden. 2 of the ISCs have since established standard operating procedures for the communication and exchange of piracy-related information so as to raise situation awareness and facilitate coordinated response. Through these efforts, the ReCAAP ISC has created a community of practitioners coming from shipping lines, academia, governments, agencies, fostering trust, understanding, and collaboration between them. Together, this has improved the overall piracy and sea robbery situation in Asia. Between 2007 and 2020, there was an average of 125 incidents a year in Asia, compared to 225 a year between 2000 and 2006. But we need to continue to stay vigilant and guard against this threat. As a major transshipment hub port serving the region and the world, Singapore is committed to doing our part in strengthening the role and effectiveness of the ReCAAP ISC. We have hosted the ISC since its establishment 15 years ago and have devoted significant resources towards its operations over the years. By locating in Singapore, the ISC is plugged into a vibrant maritime ecosystem. This gives the ISC a good feel of the powers of the industry and the opportunity to forge collaborations with key maritime stakeholders such as industry players, naval forces, the academia. Singapore is honored to have played an active part in the ISC's development over the years and will continue to work with the contracting parties of ReCAAP in giving the Centre our strongest support. Together with the able leadership of the ReCAAP ISC team, I'm confident that the Centre will continue to grow from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. For this commemorative event, Mr. Kitak Lim, Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, has kindly sent a keynote address in the form of a video. I would like to share the video message now.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Mr. Masafumi Kuroki, the Executive Director, for the invitation to address you at your 15th Anniversary Symposium under the theme, Enhancing Regional Cooperation, 15 Years and Beyond. There is no denying that the COVID-19 pandemic still impacts the world and the maritime sector in particular. But no matter how difficult the circumstances, the world depends on safe, secure, and efficient international shipping. Seafarers have been the silent heroes and collateral victims of this crisis, as the travel restrictions have left hundreds of thousands of them stranded on ships or unable to join ships. I'm urging all IMO member states to take effective action to facilitate ship crew change in line with the resolution adopted in December 2020 by the UN General Assembly, which calls particularly for the urgent designation of seafarers as key workers providing essential services. Key workers designation is crucial to ensure prioritization for vaccination. Therefore, we have dedicated this year the World Maritime theme, Seafarers at the core of shipping's future, to the heroes who continue to deliver essential goods and services throughout the pandemic and beyond. Let's all put seafarers at the heart of our discussion and action this year. As you all know, our seafarers are facing a multitude of security threats occurring in the maritime domain, one of the main issues being piracy incidents. This is where initiatives like ReCAAP plays a major role. ReCAAP is the first regional government-to-government agreement to promote and enhance cooperation on piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia, and a model for other regions of the world. In the summer of 2019, I had the pleasure to visit ReCAAP ISC for the second time. IMO remains committed to being a strong supportive partner organization to ReCAAP to enhance regional cooperation through information sharing and capacity building. Since 2009, ReCAAP ISC has been sharing details of incidents reported with IMO on a weekly basis, which are incorporated into IMO's global database and annual reports. Information sharing is one of the most important pillars to address piracy and armed robbery, and I would like to express our appreciation for your continued support to IMO. IMO has been actively engaged in addressing piracy issues since 1983. This led to the collection of publication of reports on acts of piracy and armed robbery against ships, as well as the development of a comprehensive range of guidance on prevention, repression, and investigation of piracy and armed robbery, including the best management practice developed by the industry to outline the appropriate procedure to be employed when responding to acts of piracy and armed robbery against ships in a specific region which the IMO supports. We are supporting member states to develop a coordinated whole-of-government approach to maritime security. Actions by IMO member states have been successful in addressing piracy in many regions, but this has required strong cooperative efforts between governments, navies, and law enforcement agencies, also involving industry and NGOs. IMO provides a forum for these entities to work together. The organization addressed piracy issues in Gulf of Aden, culminating in the Djibouti Code of Conduct, and we have helped convene meetings with the naval forces, which led to improved civil-military cooperation. IMO has also long been active in the Gulf of Guinea. More recently, we have been applying the lessons learned from our activities in Asia Pacific and the Western Indian Ocean to the countries of West and Central Africa. Despite the efforts to date, the escalating situation in the Gulf of Guinea calls for our continued collaboration and cooperation to support the efforts of the littoral states against the increase in hijacking, kidnapping of a crew. One of the key challenges in the Gulf of Guinea is under-reporting of the incidents, sometimes estimated to be as high as 60 to 70%. This leads to ineffective analysis and understanding of the situation. This is why I would like to encourage ReCAAP to strengthen your efforts and capacity building activity to help promote and share your experience and achievements with other regions. I'm certain that your successful experience can help parties in other regions to further enhance their capacity of an effective information sharing mechanism. While we see progress, there's still more work ahead for all of us. IMO remains committed to cooperate with all relevant stakeholders and regional initiatives. Taking a cue from your theme, enhancing regional cooperation 15 years and beyond, I would like to encourage you to showcase and share what effective regional collaboration can achieve to address both long-lasting but also emerging security threats. I wish you fruitful deliberations at this, your anniversary, Symposium, as well as fair winds and following seas for the coming 15 years. We look forward to our continued strong future collaboration. Thank you.
We would like to thank Secretary General Lim for taking time to record this special message. Our next speaker will address the topic of ReCAAP, the first 15 years and the way forward. I would like to invite Mr. Wajima Takehiko, Governor from Japan and Director, Space and Maritime Security Policy, Foreign Ministry of Japan. Mr. Wajima, please.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Mr. David Lee. Admiral George Ursavia, Chairperson of ReCAAP ISC Governing Council, His Excellency Mr. Ong Ye Kung, Minister for Transport, Republic of Singapore, His Excellency Mr. Kee Tak Lim, Secretary General, International Maritime Organization, His Excellency Ambassador Kuroki Masafumi, Executive Director, ReCAAP Information Sharing Center. It is my great honor to have an opportunity to make brief remarks on this commemorative occasion. On behalf of the government of Japan, I'd like to congratulate for the 15th anniversary of ReCAAP. I'd also like to express our great respect and gratitude for efforts of the related countries contributing to the development of ReCAAP Information Sharing Center. And I also like to express my gratitude to the ISC Secretariat led by Executive Director Ambassador Kuroki. Japan, as a maritime nation, has achieved economic growth through maritime trade. Thus, we consider that it is essential to realize free, open, and stable seas, upheld by a maritime order governed by law and rule rather than force. Based on this idea, we have actively worked on maintaining and strengthening maritime order based on the rule of law and ensuring safe maritime transport in coordination with other countries. Based upon such standpoint, Japan has been supporting the ReCAAP ISC's counter-piracy efforts since its inception in cooperation with other contracting parties. To address increasing cases of piracy and sea robbery in Asia, Japan proposed to start drafting an anti-piracy regional cooperation agreement at the ASEAN Plus 3 summit in 2001. The agreement was eventually finalized as a ReCAAP in 2004, and the Information Sharing Center was established in Singapore in 2006. Since its very beginning, Japan has been supporting activities of the ReCAAP ISC by sending executive directors and other staff, as well as providing financial contributions to its capacity building activities as a main donor. In addition, to strengthen maritime law enforcement capability of Southeast Asian countries and ensure safe maritime transport in the area, Japan has provided patrol vessels and maritime safety equipment to maritime law enforcement agencies of Southeast Asian countries. Furthermore, we also give attention to sharing our knowledge and expertise by inviting officers of maritime law enforcement agencies to Japan and also dispatching Japanese experts to those countries. Japan considers that maintaining and strengthening the Indo-Pacific region's free, open maritime order as international public goods will bring stability and prosperity to all the countries in the Indo-Pacific region without discrimination. In order to promote this vision in practice, Japan is advancing 3 pillars. Firstly, the promotion and establishment of fundamental principles such as the rule of law, freedom of navigation, and free trade. Secondly, the pursuit of economic prosperity through enhancing connectivity, including through quality infrastructure development in accordance with international standards. Thirdly, initiatives for ensuring peace and stability that include assistance for capacity building on maritime law enforcement, anti-piracy measures, disaster risk reduction, and non-proliferation. In accordance with this vision, Japan will continue the regional cooperation under the ReCAAP ISC and also the support to enhance maritime law enforcement capability of Asian coastal states to realize a free and peaceful Asian Sea. In recent years, under the leadership of Executive Director Ambassador Kuroki, the ReCAAP ISC has made significant progress in improving timely and accurate information sharing, enhancing the partnership with contracting parties, strengthening the partnership with contracting parties, strengthening engagement with maritime community, and enhancing the dissemination of information. With these achievements, the ReCAAP ISC is internationally acclaimed as a successful model of regional cooperation. Even though there are some increase in the number of incidents of piracy and sea robbery in Asia in the last few years, when compared with the former half of 2010s, when many accidents occurred, the number of incidents decreased significantly. This is the result of the ReCAAP ISC's activities, such as information sharing, capacity building, and cooperation with other organizations. Regarding information sharing of incidents of piracy and sea robbery, which is the core mission of the ReCAAP ISC, accurate and timely information sharing, including issuing warnings, has greatly contributed to prompt action by coastal states and also ensuring safe navigation of vessels. In recent years, higher quality information has been provided by analyzing trends of piracy and sea robbery in Asia based on the accumulated data of post incidents reported to the ReCAAP ISC, and these efforts are highly appreciated. In addition, capacity building activities such as a capacity building workshop, capacity building senior officers meeting, and capacity building executive program have contributed to improving participating countries' capability of dealing with incidents, and it has enabled them to take appropriate actions after getting information of incidents. Through these activities, confidence building and enhancement of partnership among contracting parties and other countries has also been promoted. Furthermore, in addition to continuing the task of countering piracy and sea robbery, the ReCAAP ISC is addressing emerging issues such as maritime cybersecurity and maritime terrorism by raising awareness on these threats and collecting and analyzing information, including identify the nexus of these crimes with piracy and sea robbery. We appreciate these ReCAAP ISC's efforts and hope that ReCAAP ISC to continue to develop further as the relevant international organization in the field of maritime security by adjusting itself to the new era. On the other hand, in order for the ReCAAP ISC to continue enhancing its reputation as a relevant international organization in this field in the future, it is essential to develop its organization. For this purpose, it is imperative to realize the accession of the competent countries in the maritime security field. To respond to the changing circumstances of maritime security in Asia, the ReCAAP ISC needs to evolve further as a relevant organization with these new countries in future. To realize peaceful agency from piracy and sea robbery, which the ReCAAP ISC has been aiming at, besides support for the ReCAAP ISC's activities, it is required that all the stakeholders, such as the related countries, international organizations, and the shipping industry will share responsibility and play their important roles. Japan will continue to take a leading role in stabilizing agency and also realizing free and open Indo-Pacific in cooperation with ReCAAP ISC and all the related countries. Lastly, on behalf of the government of Japan, I'd like to express once again our great appreciation for the ReCAAP ISC's achievement over 15 years, and also convey Japan is determined to continue to contribute actively to ReCAAP ISC's activities in close cooperation with each related countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wajima. Next, it is my pleasure to invite Inspector General K.R. Suresh, PTM, TM, Deputy Director General, Indian Coast Guard, to address the topic of the relevance of ReCAAP to the maritime community, perspective of India. Inspector General, please.
Thank you, Mr. David Lee. His Excellency, Mr. Ong Ye Kung, Minister of Transport, Republic of Singapore, Excellencies, High Commissioners, Governors, Admiral George V. Eusebia Jr., Chairperson of ReCAAP ISC Governing Council and Commandant of the Philippines Coast Guard, Mr. Michael Foon, Secretary General, Federation of Asian Shipowners Association, Mr. Masafumi Karoki, Executive Director, ReCAAP ISC, distinguished speakers, panelists, participants, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning, afternoon, and evening to participants from across the globe. I am Inspector General K.R. Suresh, Deputy Director General, Operations and Coastal Security of the Indian Coast Guard, which is India's principal maritime law enforcement agency and is responsible for responding to maritime safety and security in our area of responsibility. On behalf of the Indian Governor, Director General K. Nadarajan, I express my sincere thanks and appreciation to Mr. Masafumi Karoki, Executive Director, ReCAAP ISC, for organizing the symposium to mark the 15th anniversary of ReCAAP. It is indeed an honor and privilege to participate in the symposium and share India's perspective on the relevance of ReCAAP to the maritime community. Piracy is a crime of opportunity that exploits gaps in international political and economic systems that are far from seamless. In the late 90s, Southeast Asia gained notoriety as a piracy hotspot, accounting for more than half of the annual recorded piracy incidents worldwide. This trend peaked in 2000 when out of 469 globally reported attacks, 242 occurred in Southeast Asia. However, as the decade progressed, a remarkable downward trend was observed. In 2009, only 45 incidents of piracy occurred in Southeast Asia, compared to a total of 416 incidents reported globally. This notable reversal occurred because countries in the region came together and evolved a collaborative framework in 2006 to combat the menace of piracy and armed robbery at sea. Ladies and gentlemen, ReCAAP was the first regional government-to-government agreement between 14 contracting parties of Asian origin to combat piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia. ReCAAP represented a transition from primarily local to increasingly regional efforts to address these issues. The agreement accorded primacy to national sovereignty while facilitating cooperation between the contracting parties. The Information Sharing Center of ReCAAP, set up in 2006, had a profound impact on combating piracy and armed robbery through information sharing, capacity building, and cooperative frameworks. The center facilitated development of operational linkages and synergy amongst the national focal points for expeditious information sharing and response. Consequently, the number of incidents in the region declined, and in recognition of its efforts, ReCAAP ISC was declared as a center of excellence for information sharing in 2018. Though ReCAAP ISC is celebrating only its 15th anniversary, however, this short period of 15 years is marked with pioneering achievements and key milestones. In 15 years, ReCAAP ISC has evolved and forged cooperative arrangements with the shipping industry, academia, and other international maritime bodies. The center has published numerous periodical updates, alerts, special reports, and guidebooks to share best practices and recommendations with the maritime industry and regional authorities. It has also instituted a useful series of research reports containing invaluable analysis, conducted successful capacity building programs, and acted as a conduit amongst the stakeholders. Its inclusive approach and non-binding processes have been duly recognized by the International Maritime Organization while framing the Djibouti Code of Conduct. The accomplishments under the ReCAAP framework generated keen interest amongst countries with significant stake in safe shipping in the region. 6 contracting parties have subsequently acceded to the agreement, and with likely accession of France and Germany, the forum will be further strengthened. This growing membership is reflective of ReCAAP's credibility and growing relevance to the international maritime community. ReCAAP remains a milestone in the annals of regional cooperation and represents the political will of contracting parties to cooperate for mutual benefit and maritime well-being of the region. India has always accorded utmost priority to regional maritime cooperation and played a stellar role in the deliberation for evolving and subsequent drafting this robust collaborative framework. In fact, it was the apprehension of hijacked vessel Alondra Rainbow by the Indian Coast Guard in 1999, which kick-started the process of formation of regional cooperative arrangements like HAGGAM and ReCAAP. Incidentally, India was the 10th contracting party to ratify ReCAAP in June 2006, which enabled the agreement to come into force. India has been steadfast in supporting ReCAAP ISC in its endeavor to combat piracy and armed robbery in the region. India held the post of Vice Chairperson of the Governing Council in the center's formative years. One Indian Coast Guard officer has been deputed as a secondary to ISC since 2007. India has been contributing financially to ReCAAP ISC and has co-hosted the capacity building workshops in 2011, 17, and 2019. We jointly hosted the International Seminar on Safe and Secure Seas at Goa in February 2017 to commemorate the 10th anniversary of ReCAAP and 40th anniversary of the Indian Coast Guard. India believes in playing a constructive role in the forum while according primacy to the principle of consensus building, which is the bedrock of this agreement. India supported the provision of a 4-week period for building consensus in case of plural nominations, while framing the rules and procedures for appointment of executive director. India has also supported the proposal of ReCAAP ISC to study, research, and analyze the nexus between maritime terrorism and cybersecurity with piracy and armed robbery. Our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, has outlined the vision of Sagar, which guides India's maritime cooperative engagements. Sagar means ocean in Hindi and stands for security and growth for all in the region. Through Sagar, India seeks to deepen economic cooperation, strengthen capacity and capabilities of maritime neighbors, seek collective action and cooperation for peace, safety and security, and enhance prospects of sustainable development for all in the region. India remains committed to curb incidents of piracy and armed robbery against ships in its area of responsibility. As the principal maritime law enforcement agency in India, Indian Coast Guard is undertaking around-the-clock surveillance of our maritime zones, to ensure the safety and security of mariners. This includes electronic surveillance through shore-based radar stations, as well as physical surveillance by ships and aircraft. We are functioning closely with Directorate General of Shipping, port authorities, and marine police to address few incidents of petty thefts at anchorage in some ports. Regular community interaction programs are being conducted with the fishing community in cooperation with fisheries authorities, fishermen associations, and marine police. We invited participation from Directorate General of Shipping, Indian Ship Owners Association, port authorities, and marine police in the capacity building workshops, which we co-hosted in 2017 and 2019. This initiative provided the participants much needed insight into the regional best practices, experiences, and the significance of multi-agency coordination. I'm happy to report that since then, no incidents of piracy and armed robbery have been reported in Indian waters. Ladies and gentlemen, this 15th anniversary symposium of ReCAAP bears testimony to the commitment of the 20 contracting parties, the shipping industry, and other stakeholders. I am sanguine that ReCAAP ISC will continue to shore up its reputation, stature, and reliability among the seafaring community and keep the seas in the region safe and secure through collaborative efforts. India remains proud of its association with ReCAAP ISC, and I reiterate India's commitment and resolve towards supporting all endeavors of ReCAAP ISC. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Inspector General Suresh. ReCAAP ISC has been sharing timely and accurate information on piracy and sea robbery in Asia since 2006. It is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Masafumi Kuroki, Executive Director of ReCAAP ISC, to present 15 years of analysis of piracy and sea robbery incidents in Asia. Executive Director, please.
First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to all of you for joining the symposium. I also appreciate the welcome address of the Minister Ong Yi-kang and the keynote address of the Secretary General Ki-tak Lim for highly evaluating the role of ReCAAP for maritime safety in Asia. My name is Masafumi Kuroki, Executive Director of ReCAAP Information Sharing Center. Today, I have the pleasure of sharing 15 years analysis of piracy and sea robbery in Asia and achievements of ReCAAP. The scope of my presentation is composed of 4 points: long-term trend, incident types, achievements, and the way forward. Next. This graph shows the long-term trend of incidents in Asia from 1991 to 2020. It compares 15 years period before and after the establishment of ReCAAP. There was a significant increase in the late 1990s and early 2000s. More than 200 incidents occurred every year. It threatened the safety of crew, safe transport of goods and energy, and caused higher operation cost. Against the escalating situation, the countries in the region agreed on a legal framework for regional cooperation, ReCAAP, which came into force in 2006. Since then, the number of incidents has become lower than the period before ReCAAP. ReCAAP has played a role of inciting and facilitating the efforts of coastal states and the shipping industry to address the maritime crime. Sorry, yeah, not this one, before, yes. Concerning piracy and sea robbery in Asia, we pay attention to the Strait of Malacca and Singapore because these straits are a vital sea lane for trade between Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. This graph shows the number of incidents in the Straits of Malacca and Singapore from 1991 to 2020. The blue line is the Malacca Strait, and the red line is Singapore Strait. As you can see, many incidents occurred in the Malacca Strait from 2000 to 2004. It was then designated as a war risk zone by the Joint War Committee of Lloyd's Insurance Group. However, the situation began to improve in 2005. It is largely due to the coordinated ship patrols of the littoral states, namely Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, under the Malacca Straits Patrol, which was launched in 2004. Since then, the incidents have come down to a very small number. On the other hand, the incidents in the Singapore Strait increased from 2011. We had the highest number of 99 incidents in 2015. But thanks to the arrest of perpetrators, the incidents dropped to 2 cases in 2016, but they have started to rise again. The Straits of Malacca and Singapore are situated in the territorial seas of littoral states. Therefore, the jurisdiction of law enforcement belongs to each littoral state. However, the success of the Malacca Strait Patrol shows how effective the cooperation between littoral states can be to address trans-border crimes. Now I share the situation in the South China Sea. This graph shows the number of incidents from 1991 to 2020. The number has been fluctuating, and it is at a low level in recent years. But compared to other locations, incidents in the South China Sea were more severe in nature. In 2014 alone, there were 15 incidents of hijacking of tankers for oil cargo theft, which is one of the serious types committed by organized criminal groups. Now let me present the general pattern of incidents in Asia. We have analyzed 1,740 incidents reported in the past 14 years and identified some general patterns as follows. First, 87% were armed robbery against ships in the territorial seas, while 13% were piracy at high seas. The majority involved a small number of perpetrators of 1 to 6 men. The perpetrators were not armed with heavy weapons in most of the cases. Only in 10% of incidents, they were armed with guns and knives, and in 33% with knives or machetes. No weapon was reported in half of the incidents. Usually, the perpetrators were not violent. The crew members were not harmed in 80% of the incidents. And nothing was stolen in 33% of the incidents. Otherwise, ship stores were mostly stolen items. And most of the incidents occurred during hours of darkness. These patterns indicate the majority of incidents in Asia are not violent crimes, but rather robberies and petty thefts of opportunistic nature. Having said that, we have experienced serious types of incidents which do not fit the general pattern that I mentioned. This slide shows the trend of the different types of incidents. The robbery or petty thefts of opportunistic nature occurred throughout the 14-year period. In most of these cases, the crew members were not harmed. More serious incidents were those committed by organized criminal groups who didn't hesitate to harm the crew. From 2007, we have seen mainly 3 types of these serious incidents, which were hijacking of tugboats, theft of oil cargo from tankers, and abduction of crew for ransom. I present here the modus operandi of these serious incidents. Hijacking of tugboats occurred from 2009 to 2014 with a total of 13 incidents. They hijacked tugboats and barges and abandoned the crew in life rafts. And stolen tugboats and barges were renamed and sold in black markets. Oil cargo thefts from tankers occurred from 2011 to 2017 with a total of 42 incidents, and most of them occurred in the South China Sea. They hijacked a small tanker transporting oil products, tied up the crew, and steered the tanker far from shore. Then they siphoned the oil products to another ship and sell it in black markets. This type of incident has not occurred since 2018, thanks to the arrest of masterminds and perpetrators, and likely due to the drop of oil price. Abduction of crew for ransom started in March 2016 in the Sulu seas in the Philippines. The abduction is claimed by the Abu Sayyaf group, the terrorist group in Mindanao. They are armed with heavy weapons, kidnap crew from ships, and claim ransom. And since 2016, a total of 86 crew were abducted in 20 actual incidents. And unfortunately, 11 crew members were killed, and 4 crew members are still in captivity. Against the escalation of these serious incidents, we have produced guidebooks for the shipping industry on each of these 3 types of incidents. We have also produced a general guidebook, Regional Guide for Asia, to address all types of incidents. Now let me present the achievements of ReCAAP. With 15 years of operation, ReCAAP has made steady progress, and it is considered a successful model of regional cooperation. As achievements of 15 years, I would like to list up 5 points. First is the establishment of an effective information sharing mechanism. Second is the expansion of member countries. Third is the qualitative analysis of incidents. Fourth is cooperation for the establishment of Djibouti Code of Conduct in East Africa. And the fifth is a wide network and cooperation with international and regional organizations, as well as with the shipping industry. And because of time constraint, let me elaborate on the first 3 achievements. Timely and accurate information sharing is a core mandate of ReCAAP ISC. Therefore, most important achievement is the establishment of an effective information sharing mechanism. This mechanism is based on the IMO Maritime Safety Committee Circulars 1333 and 1334. There are 4 steps. The first step is the incident reporting from ship to the nearest coastal state. The center has been advising the shipping companies to report all incidents immediately to the nearest coastal state. Ships are now reporting most of the incidents in Asia. The second step is the verification of incidents by focal points of member countries. It is an essential step for getting accurate information. And this verification is quite unique with ReCAAP among various reporting centers. It is already a well-established practice of focal point. The third step is the incident reporting from focal point through ReCAAP network. This network is well established among 20 focal points and the center, and it is also promoting close cooperation and solidarity among member states. The fourth step is the dissemination of information by the center. The center has been doing a lot for quick dissemination of information to the broad maritime community. We are using all the communication tools as much as possible. And our effort of media outreach is also producing very positive results. The center's information is increasingly covered by media. This chart summarizes the 4 steps of information sharing mechanism that I just mentioned. The 4 steps are presented in the flow of process from the top to the bottom of this chart. The second achievement that I would like to mention is the expansion of member states. ReCAAP started with 14 Asian countries, and the membership has increased to 20 countries now, including 4 European countries, Australia, and the United States. Furthermore, France and Germany are taking respective procedure to join ReCAAP. The expansion of membership to the countries beyond Asia, particularly to the major maritime states, indicate that the relevance of ReCAAP is widely recognized. It also enriches the capability of ReCAAP with expertise and experiences member states can contribute to our activities. The third achievement is the qualitative analysis of incidents. The number of incidents is surely important, but the nature of incidents is also a useful information for maritime risk assessment. And from this viewpoint, we have developed a qualitative classification to reflect the level of severity. It takes into account the violence factor and the economic loss. By combining these 2 factors, we classify the incidents into 4 categories. This classification is also unique with ReCAAP ISC. Among all the incidents from 2007 to 2020, only 5% of incidents were very serious, category 1, and 50% were petty thefts of category 4. Lastly, on the way forward, I would like to underline the importance of sustaining anti-piracy efforts amid the emergence of other maritime crimes. Unfortunately, there are various maritime crimes. Because of limited assets and manpower, maritime agencies need to put priority. And when the piracy and sea robbery become less severe, other crimes such as IUU fishing, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and smuggling may get higher priority. However, maritime transport, which supports more than 80% of international trade, is essential for economic development and people's life. The piracy and sea robbery is a direct threat to this important maritime transport. Therefore, combating piracy and sea robbery should remain a priority task of maritime agencies. In this regard, I think the ReCAAP should continuously take the following actions. First, we need to constantly make the 4 steps of our mechanism function effectively and efficiently, and to improve it further. Secondly, since the focal points are the linchpin of information sharing and law enforcement, continued enhancement of their capability is indispensable. The shipping industry is an important partner. Without incident reporting by ships, law enforcement by coastal states cannot be effective. Therefore, the ReCAAP should continue to proactively engage the shipping industry. And lastly, we have to be prepared to respond to new types of incidents. The abduction of crew in the through services that I mentioned was not anticipated by many before it occurred in 2016. But quick response of the coastal states has significantly reduced the incidents. Our center has worked very closely with the Philippines with alerts, analysis, and recommendations. The center will remain vigilant to address emergence of new types of incidents. Although information sharing by ReCAAP is an important part of the whole process of addressing maritime crimes, the role of other players, such as the law enforcement agencies, the shipping industry, and international and regional organizations, is indispensable. I want to underline that the shared responsibility and collective actions should continue to be the most important guidance for the way forward. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. I think the ReCAAP and its member countries have made a lot of progress in combating piracy and sea robbery. But there must be the need to improve in some areas and to embark on new areas for achieving the mission of ReCAAP. I'll be glad to hear the enlightening views of the panelists when they will discuss the future of ReCAAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director. Since its establishment, ReCAAP IRC has been actively engaging the shipping industry as an important partner. It is my pleasure now to invite Mr. Michael Poon, Secretary General, Federation of ASEAN Ship Owners Association, to address the topic of ReCAAP and the fight against piracy and sea robbery and industry's perspective. Mr. Poon, please.
David, thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. Ong, Minister of Transport, Republic of Singapore, Admiral George, Chairman of the ReCAAP Governing Council, Mr. Masamu Kuroki, ReCAAP Executive Director, Excellencies, Ambassadors, distinguished Governing Council, ladies and gentlemen. FASA congratulates ReCAAP on its 15th anniversary symposium. I thank Executive Director Kuroki for the delivery of the Piracy and Armed Robbery Report, and also congratulate the ReCAAP of its achievement in the past 15 years. Next slide, please. Now, before I begin, I thought maybe I should share a bit more about what FASA is all about, because I'm making the assumption that not many of us are familiar with FASA, or the Federation of ASEAN Ship Owners. As in the slide, as you can see, the Federation of ASEAN Ship Owners was formed in November 1975, and today we are 8 countries strong, and not in any particular order. The country members of FASA are Brunei, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Myanmar, and Singapore. FASA is actually motivated by a common desire for closer cooperation in order to increase the role of ASEAN shipping in the carriage of the region's cargoes, as well as to contribute to the development of the intra-ASEAN trade. The Federation of ASEAN Ship Owners Association was therefore conceived with these objectives in mind, as you can see on the slide. Next slide, please. As one of the founding members of FASA, the Singapore Shipping Association, SSA, is the secretary for FASA. I also serve as the Secretary General to FASA. Now, FASA is a recognized ASEAN NGO. We attend international meetings such as the ASEAN Maritime Transport Working Group, where I will highlight the issues and concerns from the industry to the ASEAN member states. FASA also works very closely with the ASEAN member states in issues such as the establishment of the Same Risk Area for the Ballast Water Convention, as well as piracy and armed robbery in the region. Next slide, please. Now, please allow me to indulge a few minutes to put in perspective a simplified slide that kind of summarizes the complexities and the diversity of the shipping industry. Now, on the left of your screen, shipping is probably easier to visualize with the categories of ship that carry goods to support global trade. For example, container liners, oil tankers, chemical tankers, gas carriers, ro-ro vessels, and bulk carriers are typical of what you can see in the open seas. Now, these vessels are purpose-made for the goods that they carry. Well, running these vessels are also an ecosystem of players who operationalize shipping around the world, and thus, in a way, offering some level of reliability and consistency on how cargo is carried on board ships and are safely transported to their final destinations. As you can see in the middle of the slide, there are many entities within the shipping community with vast interests as well as interactions, and also the relationship between different stakeholders so that the right party can be engaged, for example, the cargo owner or the ship manager, etc. Now, together, they make up the main shipping industry stakeholders, which is again diverse, each with their own objectives and interests. Now, to the right, you can see that even then, for every type of cargo a ship carries, there are many stakeholders that are involved. And this picture on the right typically shows you a cargo profile of a ship that's carrying that cargo itself. Now, so for an event that affects a cargo-laden ship on its journey, it is not as simple as calling a ship owner or the ship manager or the charterer or the ship agent. What it means is that if a ship is held, detained, or delayed by acts of piracy or hijacking, that will kick off a convoluted chain of events as well as complexities in contacting people to get a complete picture of what is at stake in order to address the situation. Next slide, please. Thus, the shipping industry appreciates the services of organizations that can help us in providing a dashboard or analytics of events that took place and a situational awareness and appreciation of what may or could occur if a ship's voyage has to cross certain high-risk areas. For us in the shipping industry, we see three major enablers that assist the shipping industry in the critical operations at sea: safety, security, and environment. Now, for safety, the safety of ships and their crew, tasks such as border control, search and rescue, safe navigational aids, and vessel traffic management systems are vital and necessary for us. In security, data analytics and assessment on piracy publicized high-risk areas, anti-piracy measures such as patrols, the combined task force, and not only serve to prevent piracy attacks, but also provides a secure and safe environment for ships to sail unhindered by any unfriendly forces or aggressors to disrupt freedom of the transit of goods. The third enabler, environment. As you know, ships operate in open waters, many a times out of sight of any nearest landfall. Shipping upholds industry standards as well as environmental protection and have always been self-regulating to ensure that we don't pollute the very space that we all work in. But importantly, because shipping operates in open waters, a distress call made can be challenging in terms of response. Next slide. So what we've seen so far in terms of robbery and piracy in our perspective. Now, COVID-19 has certainly presented an increase in incidents of boarding of ships with intent to rob, steal, or to take control and take over a vessel. Some of these events can be due to economic pressures, with challenges of certain sectors of the population left with not much to keep food on the table. When economies are closed because of movement restrictions that the pandemic has brought, smaller businesses who rely on the open economy will suffer. Now, we've been seeing news about thefts and boardings on board slow-moving vessels in the Straits of Singapore. while it may appear to be minor, as in ReCAAP's categorization of level 4, which is the least severe, but if left unchecked, perpetrators will feel emboldened to risk more and do more for such endeavors. It will and it may give rise to a bigger problem if left unaddressed. Recent incidences, especially off the west coast of Africa, again reminded the shipping industry that piracy is still very much alive and not yet stamped out. Now, they are stark reminders about the possible violence with which piracy attacks are conducted, the dangers that seafarers face, as well as the significant losses that may occur both in terms of human life and the property of the ship owners and the operators. As the IMO Secretary General, Mr. Kitat Lim, has said, the threat posed by piracy and armed robbery against ships has been on IMO's agenda since the 1980s till today, which are focused on South China Sea, Straits of Malacca and Singapore, and of course, more recently, in the Africa region and the wider Indian Ocean. And to the shipping industries, entities such as ReCAAP will continue to play an important role to highlight worrying trends that threaten global trade, and also for shipping operators like ourselves to be aware as we plan our journey crossing over high-risk areas. Next slide, please. We are in the midst of a global pandemic. We hear of community restrictions, national borders shutting down, etc. Indeed, COVID-19 has affected every economy in the world today. Now, while vaccinations may help the pandemic from getting worse, we are actually still in a very long, dark tunnel, even though we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so for us, the industry is still concerned about piracy and armed robbery. Every incident, no matter how small it is, will mean that if left unchecked, can lead to bolder and more aggressive acts directed at shipping. Our expressions of concern includes that governments and government agencies and security agencies must continue to invest to keep piracy and armed robbery on the high seas at bay. And for every nation with a seaport and territorial waters, we call for more measures to address thefts, robberies that occur in their waters. The vessels and crew need a safe harbor when they call to port. The vessels and crew need to also know they can navigate safely when they're delivering cargo to support our economies. And this is my last slide. I'd like to thank ReCAAP Executive Director Kuroki for inviting FASA to present at the symposium. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Poon. I thank again all the speakers for their insights and invaluable views on ReCAAP. We now come to the panel discussion. We are having some technical issues with our speaker from Norway, but we trust that we will be able to bring him in by audio. And we are also very grateful to Professor Max Meja of the World Maritime University for accepting the role of moderator of the panel discussion on the future of ReCAAP. Prof, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings, and well, depending on which time zone you find yourselves, a pleasant morning, afternoon, or evening to everyone. My name is Max Mejia, and I speak to you from the World Maritime University in Malmö, Sweden, where I currently serve as professor. Allow me first to extend my sincerest congratulations and felicitations on this auspicious occasion of ReCAAP's 15th anniversary to the governments of the contracting parties, the chairperson of ReCAAP ISC Governing Council, the honorable governors, the executive director, deputy director, officers, men and women of ReCAAP ISC. I would like to especially thank Executive Director Masafumi Kuroki for inviting me to serve as moderator of this distinguished discussion panel with a focus on the theme, the future of ReCAAP. It is both a pleasure and a privilege for me to join our panelists, Mr. Haute Sivertsen, Governor from Norway, Ms. Kwale Hun, Governor from Singapore, Ms. Katerina Stanzel, Managing Director of Intertanko, and Professor Kentaro Furuya from the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, or GRIPS, in Japan. Allow me to continue by introducing each of these members of our discussion panel. Our first panelist, Mr. Gaute Sivertsen, is a director in the Maritime Department of the Norwegian Ministry of Trade, Industries and Fisheries. He is responsible for maritime regulations, including safety and security issues. He is also responsible for the governance of the Maritime Authority and the overall coordination of all IMO issues for Norway. He has a law degree from the University of Oslo and has worked with shipping and legal issues, both in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and in the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Mr. Sivertsen has been head of delegation to numerous IMO committee meetings and diplomatic conferences. He has been chairperson of the 1992 Fund Assembly of the International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund since 2011. Mr. Gaute Sivertsen became a member of ReCAAP ISC Governing Council in 2009, representing the first non-Asian member state of ReCAAP. Our next panelist is Ms. Kwa Lei Hun. Ms. Kwa joined the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore as Chief Executive Designate on the 1st of November 2018 and was subsequently appointed the Chief Executive with effect from the 1st of January 2019. Prior to this, she was with MediaCorp as Chief Editor in Channel News Asia. She has more than 12 years of work experience in the public sector, ranging from economic policies to environmental and social policies, including the US-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the National Population Secretariat. Ms. Kwa earned an MBA from IMD Business School in Switzerland and a Master's in Economics from the University of Panthéon-Sorbonne in France. She also holds a degree in psychology from the University of Southern Queensland. Ms. Kwa Lei Hun was awarded the Public Administration Medal in 2017. Next is Ms. Katerina Stanzel, who has served as Managing Director of the International Association of Independent Tanker Owners, or Intertanko, since 2012. The fifth Managing Director in the association's long history, she brings an environmental background to the position. She holds postgraduate qualifications in coastal management and business administration from universities in Germany, the United Kingdom, and Australia. A marine biologist by training, she entered the world of shipping in the 1990s. Focusing on marine pollution from ships, she spent 10 years as technical advisor for the International Tanker Owners Pollution Federation before joining the IOPC funds, a UN body tasked with administering several crucial compensation conventions for oil pollution from tankers. She's a member of the American Bureau of Shipping and sits on the Marine and European Advisory Committees for Lloyd's Register and RENA, respectively. She's also served as non-executive director on the board of Sea Alarm, a Belgian foundation that brings together NGOs, government agencies, and industry with the task to enhance oiled wildlife response. Ms. Stanzel was honored as WISTA International Personality of the Year in 2012 by the Women in Shipping Trade Association. Finally, the fourth member of the panel is Professor Kentaro Furuya. Mr. Furuya has been an officer in the Japan Coast Guard for more than 30 years, serving in both shipboard and shore-based capacities. Counting among his areas of expertise are maritime search and rescue, investigation of crimes at sea, and planning and execution of maritime security operations. He has served on Japanese delegations to IMO meetings and other international conferences relating to maritime law and maritime security measures, including counter-piracy and counter-terrorism operations. He was assigned as an associate professor at the Japan Coast Guard Academy in 2012, where he taught international law and law of the sea. In April 2015, he moved to GRIPS, the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, based in Tokyo, as a joint associate professor. As a dual appointment faculty member, he teaches law of the sea and Coast Guard policies to both overseas and domestic postgraduate students. Mr. Furuya was appointed professor at both Japan Coast Guard Academy and GRIPS in 2018. It is indeed a great pleasure to have all four of you on this panel. Now, before taking a view forward to the future of ReCAAP, it would surely do us well to take a look back at the regional cooperation agreement's significance to each of your respective organizations. I'd therefore like to start off this panel by asking each of the members to please answer the question, what has ReCAAP meant for you and your organizations over the years? Can we start with Mr. Sivertsen, please?
Thank you, Professor, and it's a great pleasure for me to join you here today. Norway became the 15th contracting party to the ReCAAP agreement and the first non-Asian member of the agreement on 29th August 2009. And even though Norway is geographically located outside Asia, we have a clear interest in combating piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia, as a significant number of Norwegian ships trade in Asia. In the years leading up to the establishment of ReCAAP ISE, the situation with regard to piracy and armed robbery in Asia was of concern both to the states in the region, to the shipping industry, and to states with an interest in providing shipping services. We believe that the establishment of ReCAAP ISE was a turning point in the fight against piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia. It provided a platform for cooperation and information sharing between states. It also provided states and industry with a clear system of reporting incidents. The dissemination of information and the very high quality analysis by the Secretariat provides states and industry with a better understanding of the situation and allows states and industry a more targeted approach to the problems. Another very important factor of the ReCAAP membership is that it provides states with a network of focal points and governors that can assist other states and industry in the event of attacks. This is especially important for states located outside of the region, like Norway. So I think that kind of sums up the main interest we had in the ReCAAP agreement initially. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sivertsen. Indeed, the international character of shipping means maritime security concerns in one region become a concern for countries outside the region as well. And so thank you for sharing that. May I please call on Ms. Kwa Lei Hoon?
Thank you, Max. Good to see you again, and joining fellow esteemed panelists in this discussion. I have to say that ReCAAP for Singapore and for myself hold a very special position as an international organization that's hosted out from Singapore. Why? Why is this so? Given the importance of the Straits of Malacca and Singapore in terms of the transportation of containers and energy, Singapore has always been a very firm believer in the ReCAAP, that it plays a very critical role to ensure safe navigation of the Straits of Malacca and Singapore. So I recall I was told by my colleagues how we worked hard to draft, finalize, and adopt the ReCAAP agreement, creating this first intergovernmental agreement to combat piracy and sea robbery. And when it was time to implement and put ReCAAP into action, we came forward with significant resources and financial support and hosted ISC here. And it has been for the past 15 years. On the personal front, for the past 2 or 3 years, I've also witnessed and appreciated ReCAAP's strength as a unique regional architecture with diverse membership. Now, the membership is not just in Singapore, but regional, as well as with members from all around the world. And they're represented by various and varied agencies and ministries. These include your Coast Guards, Navies, Maritime Authorities, Transport Ministries, Foreign Affairs. And through the discussions that we have, unfortunately, we couldn't meet this year, but for the past years, when we have our networking session, as Gota would agree with me, that we are able to harness our different capabilities and mandates, come together and share our knowledge and expertise, and this collective commitment to keep our regional waters here safe. And of course, as a larger ReCAAP community, we definitely take pride in what ReCAAP has grown in the last 15 years. It's now a global collaboration to help tackle a global common, that's what my minister mentioned earlier, through information sharing, through capacity building. And countries from beyond Asia have also joined, adding to the richness of these experiences that we have. So I believe ReCAAP has proven its value to the maritime industry through our active engagement, through understanding the needs of the industry. The regular interaction with our industry players have also been appreciated by the industry. They are the go-to source now for reliable information. So in short, Max, we look forward to more and more 15 years of ReCAAP in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lê Hun, and thank you for sharing all of that, and thanks for the hard work that Singapore has put in, and together with the other members of ReCAAP in making this work. It must be really rewarding to see, after 15 years, what it has achieved for the region and for shipping in general. So can I now please call on Ms. Katharina Stanzel?
Good afternoon, Max. I think from the perspective of Intertanker and our ship owner members, the few sort of headline important issues that surround ReCAAP are really, it is our single point of contact with a large multi-agency alliance that is dedicated to tackling piracy and armed robbery. And that is quite a unique thing, and it's incredibly important. It's a trusted entity we can come to, and that is not just when things happen, but also with concerns about how the industry can work with the government agencies and other entities that are involved in this, because the multi-agency nature of what is behind ReCAAP is really crucial in this whole achievement. It is a true example of coordinated action, which is also really important when time is of the essence and when lives are potentially at risk. This is something that we often forget. I mean, sitting in an office, it might not feel quite so threatening, but being boarded, whether that is by pirates or just somebody trying to go and get the paint locker, it doesn't really matter. You're still getting boarded. It's something that is very personal, I think, to our seafarers, and that's why it's important to be quick on the draw and to have that very strong support. We have seen the impressive track record of ReCAAP, what they have achieved in the last 15 years. It's been mentioned several times already. It is an example to the rest of the world. And for a global industry, and this has also been mentioned a number of times, we operate across boundaries, across countries. So transboundary problems such as piracy really require transboundary solutions as well. And a regional cooperation agreement such as ReCAAP is the only way of tackling that. And that's all I'd have for the intro. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for pointing out, the importance of having a multi-agency transboundary organization. And of course, as you mentioned, it's served as a very important clearinghouse for information, which definitely is very critical to ensuring the safety and security of shipping, particularly our seafarers. So thank you, Kathy. And now I'd like to invite Professor Kentaro Furuya, please.
Well, can you hear me? Since this is the first time to talk, it is my privilege to participate in such important symposium, and I thank you very much for organizers for having me. And also, I'm very glad to see you, Professor Max Mejia. I should have added that I am a graduate of WMU in 2003, and at that time, I need to confess that you were the teacher of me at that time. In relation to the relationship between ReCAAP and Japan Coast Guard, is that Japan Coast Guard has maintained close ties with ReCAAP ISC from the very beginning. To begin with, in the April 2000, JCG hosted a regional conference on combating piracy and armed robbery against ships in Tokyo. In 2001, at the ASEAN Plus 3 meeting, then the Koizumi administration proposed to establish a legal framework to promote further regional cooperation. The discussions on this issue continued in the subsequent expert meetings, and the concept of the regional cooperation agreement on combat piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia, that is ReCAAP, was developed and finalized in 2004. After the establishment of the ReCAAP ISC, JCG dispatched a seconded officer to the ISC. Besides, JCG has accepted numerous seminars and capacity building program and invited ReCAAP to join the exercise planned by the JCG. And my institution, JCG Academy and GRIFS, also invite executive officers of the ReCAAP every year to deliver a lecture concerning the role of ReCAAP in Asia and comprehensive analysis on the piracy and armed robbery in Asia to the student of Maritime Safety and Security Policy Program from Asia. This lecture has become a pertinent part of the program since the students have a precious opportunity to experience the significance of international cooperation in combating piracy and armed robbery. Besides, the students have the chance to deepen understanding of ReCAAP, which will support the future collaboration among their respective country and ReCAAP. I'll stop here and I'd like to talk more later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And indeed, it was a privilege actually having Ken as one of our students here at WM many years ago. And appreciate your intervention there, introduction, because we do share some similarities in terms of how what ReCAAP means to us. I guess I should share what ReCAAP has meant for myself and my organization, the World Maritime University, over the years. We have benefited from a long-standing partnership with ReCAAP ISC. In fact, this is officially forged through a memorandum of understanding. Most notably, ReCAAP has been providing lectures to our students, the same manner as Ken has mentioned with JCGA and GRIPS. Being the apex institution for capacity building of the International Maritime organization, our students have come from virtually every IMO member state and from every region in the world. Our close relationship with ReCAAP ISC means that our students receive first-hand information on lessons learned and best practices, and in fact really serves as a model for regional cooperation against acts of piracy and armed robbery against ships, which we all know continue to be a menace in other parts, in other regions of the world. So let me pick up from this first question and ask sort of a follow-up one. I'd request each and everyone on the panel to please give their input on this. How do you see? I mean, we're looking forward now. How do you see or would like to see ReCAAP in the coming future from the point of view for Gaute of a ReCAAP contracting state that is outside Asia and also a major ship-owning nation? Gaute, please.
Thank you, Max. Well, first, I would like we would like ReCAAP to continue the way it has been operating with a platform for collaboration and discussions. I think one of the major things that we would like to see is that all states listed in Article 18.1 of the ReCAAP agreement, that they join the agreement. to ensure that all of the littoral states join in this common objective. And I think that is perhaps the number one on our wish list to say. I think that is imperative to the success of ReCAAP. In addition, we believe that ReCAAP should remain open to states outside of the region too, as long as they would like to contribute to the objectives of the ReCAAP ISC. I think, but getting all of the littoral states to join, I think, must be job number one in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Alta. From the point of view of from an Asian contracting state and the depositary of the ReCAAP agreement, and also a major maritime hub and flag state, could you offer your thoughts, please, Lei-Hun?
Thank you, Max. Maybe to build on what Gota said, if I would say to further build on its DNA. D, data, N, network, A, analysis. What do I mean by data? Currently, in terms of the information that they've accumulated in ReCAAP over the past 15 years, there's a wealth of information there. In fact, to be here, to continue to go for a deeper analysis of the incidents at sea. Data analytics, going for predictive analysis, sharing this information with the shipping industry so that we can all be more vigilant in terms of what time, which area, which zone. That will be very, very helpful for the industry. So that's data. And network. Now, network itself, we definitely hope that ReCAAP will continue to build on its net of collaboration, expand it further. First, more members, new members to join us. Second, the focal points to continue its good work in capacity building and reaching out to the focal points to build up the monitoring, information sharing on piracy and sea robbery. Port authorities, linking out with port authorities, law enforcement agencies in order to help reduce the incidents in the Straits of Malacca and Singapore, and not forgetting as well in terms of networking with academics and institutions who have the know-how and more information in terms of expertise area to be able to complement what ReCAAP ISC is doing. Third, analysis. Now, this for me is an area which I think is worth ReCAAP thinking about in terms of beyond going for information sharing and data analysis. Could we look also deeper into, for example, the reasons and the root cause, going upstream to find the origins of these piracies and armed robbery incidents, work alongside with stakeholders to address the deeper, more complex and root causes on land. And with that, actually, there are quite a number of institutions around, for example, like RSIS, the Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Center for International Law, and also other institutions in other countries, which we could come together and perhaps do a deeper analysis into the root causes on land and work together on them. So these are my three suggestions and aspiration and hope for ReCAAP: DNA, data, network, and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Lei-Hun. DNA, we'll remember that. So can we request Kathy's input, being Intertanko being a ReCAAP partner organization and international tanker industry organization?
Yes, thank you. And I've been trying to find an acronym very quickly from my points, but I will not be able to. So I think from our perspective as an industry partner, what has been and hopefully will continue to be important is the open door policy that ReCAAP has operated from the beginning. It's that open approach to industry as a partner, welcoming industry comments and the expertise that resides within our membership, for example. For example, when we're collaborating in putting out guidance to the shipping industry, it is really important that that guidance is applied to the realities on board and the day-to-day realities of seafarers and shipping in the region generally. And I would really echo what Mr. Sivertsen has said already. The littoral states are crucial. So if it's a wish for the future, then I would say yes, absolutely. Bring them on board, the whole region on board, because that will just make it so much stronger. And then ultimately for us, and I said this before, it's acting as a single point of contact for the reporting part, because I think it's sometimes quite confusing to report to littoral states, specifically in a region that is so complex in terms of the geography sometimes. So having ReCAAP as a single point of contact makes things easier. It's also, and it would be ideal to have these close links to the policing agencies behind. So the information sharing to activate resources, and whether that's to protect or prosecute, it doesn't really matter, but it's that link that is crucial. And I guess it links with the D in the DNA example. It's about sharing that information, both on the incident side, but also then later to make sure that the consequences can be taken and we make it better over time. And we've seen the statistics, it is working. So let's just do more of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. How about Ken? Could you share something with us? Japan being the country actually that conceived ReCAAP through the Tokyo Appeal in March 2000. And of course, one of the world's biggest trading nations, a big ship owning nation. Ken?
Exactly, Professor. Well, I would expect ReCAAP to further strengthen ties among party states and take initiative to mitigate the number of acts of piracy and armed robbery against ships for the safety and security of shipping in the region. That is in line with Japanese policy. In 2016, the Abe administration articulated the free and open Indo-Pacific, or FOIP concept. The administration considered it is vital to connect Africa, which is full of potential for development, and Asia, which is the middle of the economic expansion, so as to pursue the international peace, stability, and prosperity. Since FOIP is based on the connectivity between Asia and Africa via the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, the safety and security of these oceans are the foundation to materialize the concept. From that perspective, the ReCAAP is supporting the regional states through numerous capacity building programs, first of all. Information sharing is obviously the key to crack down on the criminal activities in addition to the data analysis. No single state may counter piracy and armed robbery without international cooperation because of its transnational nature of the crimes. ReCAAP has taken a significant role in connecting relevant states and share information with the party states. This is why the ReCAAP model has been successfully expanded to counter piracy off the Gulf of Aden. Later, an agreement of the DPG Code of Conduct and accepted not only the regional states, but beyond that we have here with Norwegian delegations and in UK and even United States. One can say that ReCAAP has become an essential part of the maritime security system in the region, and I'd like to expect the ReCAAP to continue to assume this significant role. So I'd like to see the capacity building with DNA. So I'd like to make it DNA-C. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ken, and thank you very much, panel members. And I'm sure ReCAAP ISC is taking note of this. These are some very useful, very excellent contributions. I think thoughts and recommendations from the panel. Littoral states, bringing them in, and of course DNA continuing the closed door policy, and some tighter links to law enforcement, and of course capacity building. So one of the threads sort of in everyone's interventions and even the presentations earlier from other speakers have touched upon, of course, the theme of the symposium, which is enhancing regional cooperation. So my next question was, what further role do you think ReCAAP could or should play in the future in terms of similar regional arrangements in other areas of the world, whether existing or prospective? I mean, of course, we've heard the Djibouti Code of Conduct mentioned a few times. There is also the Yaoundé Code of Conduct in West Africa, and of course, we know that there are other regions around the world that are experiencing threats from maritime security incidents. So, what are your thoughts on this? Anyone would like to care to start?
I can start if you would like to.
Yes, please.
Well, I've been involved in similar regional arrangements, both in East Africa, Horn of Africa, and in the Gulf of Guinea. And we had hoped that the ReCAAP model would provide the example for these regions to follow. Unfortunately, we have not been successful in those attempts, and even though ReCAAP serves as a role model, the attempts of copying it has not been as successful in other regions, and I just hope that the stakeholders will see how the ReCAAP model has functioned in Asia, and the benefits it has provided. So I just hope that the other regions and the stakeholders in those regions will continue to look to ReCAAP as a model and try to learn from ReCAAP and its experiences and try to copy it as far as and adapt it to their regional needs. But still, we know now from experience that the ReCAAP model works. So that's what I hope, to continue to be the role model for other regions. Thank you.
Thanks, Arthur. Yes, Kathy, please.
Maybe just to add to that, because I completely agree. ReCAAP as an advisor for capacity building is a core role that will benefit others. But there is one crucial element, and I think we mustn't forget that. To demonstrate the results that ReCAAP has achieved has required a lot of hard work. It's required commitment, and it's required stability. And I think if those factors are not given, it is a lot harder. So, and we have observed exactly the same as Mr. Sivertsen, that it's not something you can easily transplant unless those crucial factors are given. And I think you can't stress enough the hard work element of it, because ReCAAP didn't just happen. There are a lot of entities that have put a lot of effort into making this work. And to transpose it to somewhere else, somehow that ethic has to go with it.
Thanks, Kathy. Leon, yes, please.
Max, if I could add to what Katrina and Gota have said, in fact, I think ReCAAP has contributed and has been sharing its expertise and our model of collaboration in forums such as IMO, and also in the establishment of the Djibouti Code of Conduct in Africa. So I guess the way of going forward is to continue, as what Kantoro-san said in terms of DNA. C is really on the collaboration part. How do we perhaps foster a closer collaboration to share and go through, for example, the experiences that we have gone through? Having said that, every different region also have their own unique circumstances. I've personally spoken to my Nigerian counterpart, and I could see the commitment that he has in trying to resolve the situation in his part of the world. So it perhaps takes some time, but circumstances are unique. But what we have is a reference for him for them to take back and learn from. And I'm sure there's a lot of international attention, international support helping them as well. So I guess it is really the C element, as what Kantoro-san has mentioned, is the C element that will help us and will be needed to get the different regions out of the piracy and armed robbery situation.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. I think ReCAAP is being held as a model and must continue to serve as a model for regional cooperation in maritime security affairs. But I think our panelists here have emphasized also the fact that it's not easy to transpose this. It's there are regional realities, geopolitical realities that may be different between different regions. But of course, it just means we need to press on and yeah, even concentrate on things like Ken mentioned, sea capacity building. So how about since we're still on this topic of sort of cooperation? How about pursuing new cooperative agreements with other organizations? Should ReCAAP be also setting aside some effort or focus on this? And if so, which organizations and why? Any volunteers? Leon.
Thanks, Max. So I would say in Singapore, I think there is complementary strengths of the ReCAAP ISC with the Republic of Singapore Navies. We have an Information Fusion Center where they look at maritime security on a more broader and larger scope. There's definitely room there. In fact, I was just looking at our panel here, right? So we've got Port Authority, we've got international organization, we've got academic research institutes. That is really the network or the end that I would say we need to we can further build up within ReCAAP with relevant organizations. I mean, I mentioned earlier RSIS and CIL. There's also WMU. We have done really thinking and research into the various aspects of piracy and armed robbery. And with the evolution of the nature of such instances as well, how do we keep watch of such trends and be ahead of the game? Because I mean, crimes always go ahead of law, so we just have to keep constantly catch up with the crime.
Okay, thanks, Leon, and yeah, fits very well in with the end of the DNA, of course, and. Any other panel members want to? Oh, Kathy, please.
Maybe just because we're talking about Singapore, the one and Leon just mentioned the reacting to crime or being on top of crime. In my mind, we also need to look forward and say what is coming next. And I think cybersecurity is something that MPA has done incredibly well with the Maritime Cybersecurity Operations Center. And I wonder whether that is something that ReCAAP needs to be at least aware of to make sure that we go forward and we're ready when those issues start appearing, because I'm sure we'll see more and more cyber attacks on vessels where people try and take over systems on board, etc. I mean, we're dealing with that at the industry end at the moment in terms of contingency planning, in terms of security, but this is something potentially where information sharing could also be very crucial. And there is an established capacity already.
Indeed, Kathy. In fact, it brings to mind another question I had meant to bring up, and that is, you know, how should ReCAAP consider the impact of rapid technological developments? For example, cybersecurity is one obvious impact. The impact of technology on shipping in general, and of course, in particular, maritime security. Ken?
Thank you very much, Professor. Well, I heard that the ReCAAP gradually extend the mandate to include maritime terrorism and cybersecurity. Needless to say, these criminal activities are significant to maintain the stability and good order at sea. It is often pointed out that the terrorist organization and the pirate syndicates are closely connected to each other, and cybersecurity in the maritime domain has become an issue at the International Maritime Organization too. Therefore, it would be natural to consider widening the mandate to such important areas. Nevertheless, it is also true that the different approaches may be taken to curtail these crimes. While the piracy and armed robbery are often viewed as a crime against international trade, those other crimes are viewed in a different manner. Interests of the state on piracy and terrorism would differ. The nature of the crime is different. Thus, the level of cooperation required would differ in counterterrorism. There needs experts and mutual understanding among states at a different level. For example, the cybersecurity is very technical, and thus a group of experts is essential to support the service at the ReCAAP. Eventually, the budget of ISC would need to be increased to support these tasks in addition to existing services. Maybe an amendment to the existing document is necessary to include other crimes. Thus, the expansion to other categories of crime is not so simple to add on from the practical point of view. Now, ReCAAP is taking the gradual approach, so cooperation among party states, mutual understanding, the experts necessary to support the activities of ReCAAP will be increased also gradually. So I hope this approach affects favorably existing services as well as the capacity building of the party states. I'd like to highlight the capacity building of the party states since the anti-terrorism operations, the counter-cyber security is highly technical and highly political. Unless otherwise there is enough number of experts in ReCAAP to analyze, to deal with data, and also to look after the state, the party state, for capacity building. The service of ReCAAP may be decreased in the future. So I'd like to maintain, at the same level of the services as it is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And Ken's also opened another front in the discussion here, and that's whether there are any other specific areas in the ReCAAP mandate that should be expanded, other threats to maritime security. So, but of course, I'd like to keep the issue of cybersecurity still open if anyone has a comment on that. So please, either cybersecurity specifically or other threats to maritime security as part of an expanded ReCAAP mandate. Please, I think Gaute had his hand raised. Yes, please.
Thank you, Max. Well, we have discussed it within the membership, of course, looking at the emerging maritime challenges such as cyber threats and terrorism that may have an impact on the situation and are related to piracy and armed robbery. At least we have an open mind, and we would like the Secretariat to study the issues and their relationship to piracy and armed robbery, and how these topics would fit in to the information sharing and analysis. I think we believe that the ReCAAP IC could interact and play a role with regard to these threats. But of course, we would like to have the whole membership on board on these issues, and I think it's a gradual process. But I really think that the Secretariat can study the matters, and then we will continue these discussions. But I know that Norway we have an open mind to having the ReCAAP IC Secretariat looking into these matters and perhaps see how they could fit into its objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaute. Lehun, please.
Thanks. Maybe to build on what Gaute said, definitely ReCAAP should be alert of the possible nexus between piracy and other threats. And actually, this would require ReCAAP to actually forge partnerships, for example. I mean, this is not an issue which starts from scratch. There are some actually organizations out there we already have some deep expertise in this area. So where can we build collaboration so that there's better synergies that can be ripped up through the network of collaboration? I think from Singapore side, we also have also a port authorities roundtable where we have linked up with actually a few ports around the world in terms of sharing of information, harmonizing of some of the data that we can share should there be an incident that happens in another part of the world. And therefore, with this fast alert, it allows you some heads up and time to prepare should the incident hit you. I think it is this mode of collaboration and information sharing that will be, I think, critical and crucial to help stop some of this crime from taking place.
Thanks, Leon. Anything from Kathy?
I was thinking, just as Li-Hun was speaking, that again, it comes back to the single point of contact idea, because it just short circuits so much redundancy in systems when information can flow one way and you know that that's the dedicated route, and then it gets shared out to everyone who needs to know. It is so much quicker. So it's great because it builds on existing strengths. And I think it's a very efficient way that we've built already. So the process is there. We're just applying it to a different focus.
Well, thank you. We actually have only 1 minute left, and which is a pity. I think everyone's been enjoying this exchange. We have an excellent panel, and I really thank you, each and every one. Gaute, Leon, Katerina, and Kentaro. So please, ladies and gentlemen, our applause, warm applause to our panelists. Thank you very much. And I think I need to hand the floor over back to ReCAAP ISC, so to make sure we are keeping in time. So again, thank you very much. And please, David, the floor is yours. I hand it back.
Thank you, Professor Mija, Governor Sivertson, Governor Kwa, Mr. Nzel, and Professor Furuya for your insightful remarks and productive discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, the symposium has almost come to an end. I now invite Mr. Masafumi Kuroki, Executive Director of ReCAAP IIC, to deliver closing remarks. Executive Director, please.
Excellencies, participants of the symposium, I would like to express my deep appreciation to all of you for attending the symposium on the occasion of 15th anniversary of ReCAAP. I would like to address my appreciation to the speakers for highly evaluating the achievements of ReCAAP, and I'm very much encouraged today by the strong commitment expressed by the speakers to continue their support and cooperation with ReCAAP in the future. I also thank the panelists and the moderator for having shared their invaluable views and suggestions for the future of ReCAAP. We received a lot of suggestions. I will not list up all of them. Maybe the DNA is easy to remember. I think there are suggestions as a short-term targets, and there are those who are more longer-term objectives. We will pay full attention or full consideration to these suggestions, which I think will surely give added value to what we have been doing. On this occasion, I would like to thank all the stakeholders of the maritime community for having worked closely with ReCAAP for the past 15 years to combat piracy and sea robbery in Asia. Without their cooperation and shared responsibility, ReCAAP couldn't have made so much achievement. ReCAAP will remain relevant open, and inclusive with the maritime community to ensure the safety at seas by building on the past achievements and watching closely the evolving maritime situation. And lastly, I'm very much pleased that the Symposium has given us a very good opportunity to deliberate on the way to pursue the mission of ReCAAP in the future. On this note, I close the 15th anniversary Symposium of ReCAAP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you very
everyone.
much, Professor Max. See you.
Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much, speakers. Thank you, Chairperson, for staying throughout the program with us. Thank you so much, governors, speakers, Prof. Max. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.